Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 3, Round 3 of the RST Competizione at Autodromo Nazionale Monza, also known as the Temple of Speed. Today, it looks like we're going to have quite the wet race here. Well, we're not, but the poor drivers. You just got to think about the amount of discipline they have to have for that throttle today with these wet conditions. Wouldn't hate to be out there right now. They seem to be having quite a ball with it, though. Doesn't seem to be any problems here in free practice. Everyone seems to be coming around just fine. Not bad, guys, not bad. Can't wait to see you all out here in the race here in just a moment. While we've got just a moment here while the server changes over. There it is. While we're sitting here waiting for the session to start, let's go ahead and go through our starting grid, shall we? On pole, we have the Steady Start Racing Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo 2022, the number 76, piloted by Emo Plate and Justin Madley. Looks like Plate will be starting us off this evening. In second, we have Soul Race Team in their number 12 BMW M4 GT3, piloted by Sky Red and Martin Schaefer. Schaefer was also our solo winner in the last round at Snetterton. Congrats to him. Let's see if he can pull out something today. In number third spot, we have Drive Through Racing in their number 193 Lamborghini Huracan Evo 2019. Nope.
I'm getting it going here again, guys.
We'll have to reconnect, yeah?
Yeah, if it'll actually let you. Don't reconnect charger.
Okay. You're just going to leave it auto, yeah?
Yeah, that's the plan. All right, everything's back live, right?
Yeah, we're good.
Oh, we already got accident behind. What's that? Oh. Number 55 of Marco Badowski seems to have fallen off the pace coming through what seems to be the Scari. Coming down into Parabolica now on the rear of the... Ooh. I apologize for the in and out audio. I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties here. Let me go ahead and get back to commentating on this race. Seems like the cameras are on auto for us right now today, and it seems like it's picking up Badowski and Mad Al for a battle for 13th. Badowski all over the rear of that BMW of Mad Al, looking to the inside, sees nothing coming through. Has a little bit wider of an exit, trying to eke out as much time as he can from this track, trying to catch up to Mad Al. Seems to come through clean. Coming down this straight here. Trying to get the toe of Mad Al in front of him. Coming out to the rear camera of Menacing Skull and Andrew Fairley. And that McLaren. Coming in for the battle between him, Moore, and Crockett, it seems, right here for the 9th place. We still have 2 hours and 20 minutes left, gentlemen. No need to try to win it on lap 1. Sure, there are bragging rights, but take it a little easy. Get settled in. The water's fine. Coming down the main straight here, you see a group of 4. Seems to be 2 Audis, a McLaren, and a BMW. Oh, we're going to make it a 3-way coming down into the first chicane. Heavy on the brakes. Ooh, we got the Fear the Hulk coming down through here, coming in behind the McLaren of Fairley. Fairley's alongside Moore here coming down. Coming down into Variante Delta here. Looks to the inside, finds nothing, closes it back up, gets a wider angle coming through this line. Seems everybody's trying to leapfrog, trying to catch any little mistake right here. If you're gonna make a move, and then try to settle in, try to conserve, this would be the time to do it. It seems the weather conditions are starting to lighten up here, making it slightly harder for these drivers with each passing lap as the line dries and they're still on their wets. Coming down the straight right before Parabolica. Interesting look as we see the BMW of red coming down through, nice and tidy. Nothing too sudden. Making it easy on those tires, so you're gonna have to last you quite a bit. The McLaren is surely coming in, trying to get up into the toe. Does he have it? It looks like he does. Is he gonna try to take a look on the inside? No. Red says, that's not available to you right now. Please try again later. Red coming on out, going down into Curva Grande. Oh, look at this. Oh, goodness. Contact between the number 55 Badowski, Fairley, and Mad Al. Stewards are going to want to take a look at that one, see if it was a little bit of elbows out, or did someone try to make a move when there wasn't any room? We seem to be on the rear of Plate here and passed by Alexander on the inside. Now you got to think, Plate, are you wanting to let it go, or are you gonna want to chase and try to stay at the top spot for at least the first stint? Plate looking out onto any wet surface, trying to cool those tires down. It turned to basically jelly once it starts heating up. Quite the wide line there from Alexander coming out of Ascari, heading down the straight, coming down into Parabolica. It seems the gap is widened between Alexander and Plate. Plate seems to be quite content on taking a breather, not wanting to battle too well. Could be the right decision. Right now, those tires getting a little breath of relief in that slight puddle there. Coming down the front straight, we have Barnett desperately trying to chase Shirley and Red. He's trying to get into the toe, comes back in behind Shirley. Firing down into the braking zone, coming into Petit-Filo. Red coming in with Shirley on his tail. I don't believe that's right with the scoring. There we go. Scoring is a little bit behind. Let's see here. Barnett did indeed squeak by coming out of Betifilio. I'm sorry. I'm going to butcher these names left and right. I apologize to any Italians out there. I'm trying my best. Firing out of Lesmo too, coming down into Seraglio. That's the way I'm going to say it. Seraglio. Coming down into Ascari. You can see the dry line forming. Every single lap it's going to get drier and drier. Those tires are going to start to deteriorate rapidly. You're going to have to think. The driver's going to start thinking, well, when would be a good time to pit? Should I stay out a little longer? Should I risk it? Should I come in early? I don't know. From my eye, it looks like there's Good bit of dry, but there's still wet patches all throughout. So I'd say give it another maybe 5-6 laps. Everybody's going to be trying to scramble for those dries. Coming around Parabolica onto the main straight. Trying to get the toe. Barnett. Looks like Mueller's coming in. Coming alongside. Trying to make that inside work. Coming into Petit Filio. Looks like he gets the job done. Easy pass, easy day. No elbows out, gentlemen. Well done. Coming down into Curva Grande. Going to that main little straight, going into the Variante Delta. All these chicanes are always going to be a major braking zone. Anybody who wants to make a move is going to be in those areas. Otherwise, you'd have to catch the toe and power on by on one of those two straights. Firing down into Lesmo 1. Hard onto the brakes. Keeps it nice and tidy. How about on that exit? Nice and tidy as well. Going into Lesmo 2. Hard on the brakes. Seems like Mueller is making his mark known. Firing out onto Serragilio. Coming down through that kink. Firing down into Ascari. It looks like Mueller's along the outside. Did he make the pass? Did he make it stick? It seems so. Mueller's actually passed in, coming into Ascari. Well done. It seems we have Crockett and Moore having a battle coming through Ascari. Gentlemen, how are your exits? Moore trying to find any little bit of extra room he can. Hard in the toe. Is he going to make a move for the inside coming up to Parabolica? He's having a look. And he's inching. No. Door was slammed. Here we come, Barnett. Trying to get the toe of Mueller ahead of him. Trying to get that toe. Trying to get away from that BMW of red. Red doesn't seem any bit slightest interest of trying to find any toe. He's going to bullhead his way through. Coming down through Betifilio right now, going into Curva Grande. Catching a ride. Oh, it looks like... Was that Badowski? No. It was Audi. RWB Audi just blew through Betifilio. We got to wonder if it was a braking issue or perhaps some other type of issue with the vehicle. Could it perhaps be an issue with his sim rig? We'll have to see. We'll have to keep updated on that. Coming down through Badowski, coming down through Variante Delta, firing off that little straight going into Lesmo 1. Seems very stable today. Not too many mistakes. A little bit of a wiggle coming into Lesmo 1. How's his exit? Nice and tidy. Coming down into Lesmo 2. Seems very steady. Very steady under braking. Very good braking. Firing out of Lesmo 2, coming down that straight with that kink. Oh, his wipers seem to be on. Does that indicate if rain has decided to come back? See if anybody else has their wipers on. Any indication. So far, I'm seeing none. I'm not seeing any rain in the air. I'm not seeing any new moisture on the track either. Seems to be a battle up ahead of him though with Crockett and Moore. Moore trying to find along the inside, coming out of Parabolica onto the main straight. Badowski's just waiting at the heels, waiting for one of them to make a mistake. Firing off down into Betifilio down that main straight. Heavy onto the brakes. Gaining so much time on the braking. Look at that. Here he comes firing out of the Betifilio, going onto the Curva Grande. Look at that time he's already caught back up. Within one braking zone, he is caught up immensely. Coming out of the Curva Grande, going into firing into Valente Delta. Let's see how well he is under the brakes. Is he going to fire off to the inside? No, but he's going to be able to come suck right on up to the back of Moore. Coming off and firing off into Lesmo 1. Looks to the inside. Decides better of it. Coming through. Now we look from Crockett. You can see just how close Badowski is now, coming up behind Moore. Moore is up on the back of Crockett, though, trying to make a move as well. Crockett's just going to easily lead him on through. He's going to try and make the Audi as wide as possible coming down into this braking zone. He's going on the defensive. Let's see if anybody makes an adjustment to that. Moore takes a lunge and finds no purchase coming through Ascari. Off into that straight. He's already right up in the toe. So is Badowski. Who's going to make the move first? Is Moore going to try to go up the inside? Crockett goes a little bit defensive. There he goes. Moore's going off the inside. Can he make it stick? Heavy onto the brakes. Heavy into the inside. He's up to his door. There he is. He takes the pass on up into Parabolica. Firing on the line the outside. You should see him come across right on Crockett to the right. Crockett's coming back from along the outside. Badowski's up and behind Crockett with his toe. Comes along the inside. Moore finally makes the pass stick, coming back into Betafilio. Badowski looking to the outside, coming along Curva Grande. Crockett keeping well. The rear of Moore well within his sights. Badowski taking a look to the inside, trying to get a double for one. Makes one stick. Crockett goes back a place. Badowski's taking him quite a heavy look on Moore, saying, "You're next." Crockett seems to be quite content of letting them fight for now. Trying to conserve, it seems. Badowski's not really trying to make any more moves, as it seems. All right, so it looks like we have a fight between RWB Audi and Nate Newcomer. Nate's trying to look for a look on the outside. RWB Audi going to take the defensive line coming into Ascari, but Nate looks like he makes it along the outside in the braking zone. RWB Audi.
Sent that one a little bit too deep, though.
Really? It looked a little bit clean to me. It looked a little fast, but it looked a little clean. RWB Audi's trying to look on, take that spot back from Nate Newcomer. Coming back out of Parabolica onto the main straight. Is he going to try to get in the toe? He's more interested in trying to find any wet patch for his probably boiling by now tires. Coming up, we're looking at Moore and Badowski again. Badowski trying to look up on the inside, coming into Betafilio, going into Curva Grande. Seems to be falling back from Moore. Now we're back with Newcomer and RWB Audi. Nate Newcomer seems to be taking quite a little bit of a stretch from RWB Audi as the rain starts to settle in again, giving these drivers' tires sweet relief. Firing down into Lesmo 1. He looks nice and clean, nice and tidy, coming on along the outside. Stretches it just a slight bit to get every little bit of time he can. Firing down into Lesmo 2. Beautiful exit. Coming down into the kink. He's gotten at least a good 10 or 11 car lengths on RWB Audi. And it seems like the cameras are thinking he's the star of the show. There it goes over to Mueller now, trying to fight with Nemzovsky. I apologize if I butchered that name. Mueller looking along the inside, coming into Betafilio. Heavy braking zone. Who's going to outbrake who? The Audi looks like it has a little bit more stable braking. Takes the move on the inside. Mueller makes the pass very cleanly coming into the first chicane, going down into Curva Grande. The Huracan slightly falling back, not wanting to battle. He's like, there you go, you can have that spot. Move on. Mueller looking to try and take down Plate. Just under 3 seconds ahead. Mueller's not trying to make any mistakes. Keeping it nice and tidy, coming through Lesmo 1, firing into Lesmo 2. Neat and tidy on the exit as well. Well within hunting down Plate in their Ferrari. Audi seems to be quite strong here at Monza today. RWB Audi looks like he's having going to be having a battle from behind from Mad Al. Firing down into Lesmo 2. On the exit, nice and tidy. Mad Al, on the other hand, is chomping at the bit coming up for RWB Audi. Less than 2 seconds between those two now. Jay Moore is still on the defensive from Badowski. Badowski is waiting in the wings for him to make any slight mistake. Red is taking off from from Moore. It's extended that gap. And see if anything happens here. Moore coming down into Parabolica, nice and steady, very smooth. Taking a bit of a shallow line. With Badowski trying to get into the toe. Firing down into the first chicane. Heavy onto the brakes. Looks like Badowski's trying to make up any time he can in the braking zones. Look at that, can close up that gap. Less than a half of a car length between in the middle of that chicane. Now we're on to Crockett now, trying to fend off from an attack from RWB Audi. RWB Audi is trying to look on the inside, coming into Curva Grande, into that, firing off into that second chicane. He's got the toe. Is he going to look for the inside, or is he going to let it wait until Lesmo? Seems to be setting him up for something perhaps in Lesmo. Firing out of there. Quite a better exit than Crockett. Firing into Lesmo 1. Still looking heavily onto make a move on Crockett. Standing out. Getting as much room as he can on firing into Lesmo 2. Again, making as much of the road as he can. Here we are looking at from the rear of Moore and the headlights of Badowski. Coming ever closer on the braking zones. They seem to have made up some time on Red coming through Ascari. Trying to get in that toe coming into Parabolica. Moore taking a shallow line, making sure he's covering all his bases while trying to make a move forward up onto Red. If my eyes didn't deceive me, I'm pretty sure I saw Nate Newcomer coming up onto the rear of of Badowski coming into Parabolica as well. So this is going to easily become a 4-car battle here in just a moment. Moore looking to the inside, coming into the first chicane. Thinks better of it. Heavy onto the brakes. Sucks right on up to the rear of that BMW. Looks to the inside, cut back. And here they are finally going into Curva Grande. Still very hungry for that position. Looks to the inside. He's going to make it stick, or is he going to think better? He lets him go. Coming into the second chicane. Oh, looks like Red overextended. Moore and Badowski taking that spot. Oh, looks like we've got Crockett spinning out and coming out of the second chicane. Whereas we look on with Mad Al taking on the battle to RWB Audi. RWB Audi taking the defensive line coming into Lesmo 2. Firing on out, coming on out of the corner. Still being quite defensive as Mad Al looks like he's taking up the toe, trying to make a move coming into the third chicane. You gotta think, is RWB Audi gonna make a defensive line here? Is he gonna force Mad Al to come onto the inside? Neither of them make a move. They come through Ascari all nice and clean. Firing off into the short straight coming into Parabolica. Where Mad Al seems to be looking like he's taking a little bit of a respite as the rain continues to pour today. RWB Audi's making quite a bit of a gap to give him a little bit of breathing room coming down the main straight. Is Mad Al going to make a daring move trying to into the braking zone? Firing down into the braking zone of the first chicane. Very neat and tidy for both of them. It seems everybody's starting to slowly get into their groove, slowly starting to settle in. Try not to battle too much, save as much as possible. As I say that, we're looking at Menacing Skull and Crockett having a battle coming out of the first chicane, coming into Curva Grande. Menacing Skull bringing a bit of a gap, as it seems like Crockett actually was having a bit of understeer coming through Curva Grande. We're looking on at Mad Al now. Still looking to make a move on RWB Audi. A little bit of a wiggle from Mad Al on the exit of Lesmo 2. Looks like we have a caution in Sector 3. Coming back, Mad Al. Slowly, ever so slowly, closing that gap in on RWB Audi. Coming down the main straight. You have to wonder, with the conditions drying up as much as they did before it started pouring rain again, how is it faring for these tires right now? As we cut over Nate Newcomer trying to have a fight with Matt Podolsky. Coming into Curva Grande. Taking a little bit of a wide line coming through there as we swap back to RWB Audi and Mad Al. Mad Al seems to have taken up at least half of that gap between the two. Firing down into that second chicane. Heavy onto the brakes. Reared Al and RWB Audi making no mistakes. It's always better to make no mistakes and come home clean than it is to fire it off down into chicane and both of you are done. As we switch over to Red, as he seems to be dropping back, a little bit of damage to the front of that BMW. As we saw him spin out earlier. Coming into the first chicane. You got to wonder what else the type of damage is at the front of that BMW. Coming into the second chicane, heavy onto the brakes. It seems a little bit unsteady. Perhaps suspension damage for that BMW. Coming behind him is Hillhorst, eagerly looking for that spot. As we're riding behind Ian Simcox now, who's a back marker 2 laps down, but don't let that get you down, Simcox. You're still out there, you're gaining experience. As we catch a ride on the back of plate, looking back into the mist, no cars to be seen as of now. No fight from Shirley yet. But my question is how close are they to Alexander? As we cut back to Badowski and Nate Newcomer. Newcomer and only Aston Martin within the field, taking on one of the only few Porsches. Firing down into Curva Grande, coming down into that second chicane. Newcomer looking out to the inside, coming into the chicane. Coming down in there, making a move, looking, thinks better of it, coming down into the braking zone. Both seem to make the getaway, coming out just fine, firing, coming on down into the Lesmo 1. Onto the brakes. Badowski seems to be taking a defensive line. Switching over to Mad Al and RWB Audi. Mad Al is yet again only a quarter of the distance as it was the last time we looked at him. And Simcox bring up the battle from behind. Simcox was a bit of an extended exit there, coming off of Lesmo 2, firing down into the kink, getting set up for this third chicane. Mad Al trying to look on the inside of RWB Audi, thinks better of it. Simcox with a clean line coming through Ascari as we look back onto Jack Alexander, your current leader, with a 17-second gap between them and the second place of plate. Coming down into Curva Grande, setting up for that second chicane. You got to think he's quite comfortable in his 17-second bubble, but you got to think with this rain, he can't let his thoughts lapse for even a second, or else he'll go firing off into the gravel. As we see Sky Red coming out of the pits, perhaps to get repaired for any damage. And see how he looks when he's coming down into the braking zone. Much more stable than earlier. Seems to have gotten at least something, what was the matter, fixed. Coming in more up behind him. As we come back over to Mad Al. Coming up onto the back of Moore. That's not Moore. I believe that's Simcox. Either way, Mad Al coming onto the back of Simcox now. You got to think, now he's got the weather to deal with, but now he's got starting to have back markers. Let's see where he decides to make the move to go around. RWB Audi behind Mad Al, extending out Lesmo 1 as much as possible. Coming down into Lesmo 2 on the exit. Seems to be just fine. Simcox seems to have quite a little bit of a gap between them, so it looks like he'll either have to deal with them coming into Parabolica or coming into that first chicane. Mad Al coming down into Ascari now. Smooth. No sudden movements. The car's very planted. Seems to have no issues as we check into the back of Alexander. Still nothing into the mist. Still a healthy 17-second gap. Having a ride along with Simcox, who seems to be very relaxed despite the rainy conditions. As we see Red taking a long look into the inside and coming out around Simcox. Simcox a little bit squirrely coming out of onto the main straight, trying to get into the toe of Red. And Simcox firing along the outside of Red, coming into the first chicane as the blue flag flies. Everybody looks clean coming out through there. Simcox, despite all warnings, despite being a couple laps down, he's in here for the fight. Again, gaining valuable experience. Firing down into the second chicane. heavy onto the brakes. Neat and tidy line coming through there and along the outside. Not too much of an extend on the exit. Coming down into Lesmo 1. Very smooth. How's his exit? Quite pinched. You have to think that what caused that correction to happen. Coming along outside of Lesmo 2, he definitely extended it on that one, trying to gain back any ground he'd lost. Coming down into the kink. Sim Cox looking onto the back of, I believe, no, that's not Warrington. Let's see here. Who do we have? Our live scoring here is a little bit behind, so I'm having to look at other. Okay, we are good. No, I believe I fixed it. Coming back on, looking onto Alexander as he leads into lap 18, or going into lap 19. I apologize. Coming down into that second chicane, nice and tidy, no mistakes. As he still continues to stretch out that lead bit by bit. Now we look on to the battle between Moore and Badowski. Newcomer have seemingly being able to get by Badowski while we were away looking at another battle. Now we're looking back at Simcox here, coming into the back of, I believe, Skull. Menacing Skull, sucking up to the back of to the rear of that BMW, trying to get a little bit of a tow before the braking zone, coming into the second chicane. Looks like Simcox overbroke it just a slight bit. Either that or he locked the brakes up. Jumping over the curb, coming back onto the racetrack, firing off into Lesmo 1. You got to think that curb hopping hurt the suspension any. I apologize. Hurt the suspension any. As we look on with Sky Red trying to hunt down Simcox. Looking in with Hill Horse right now. Not seeing anybody behind him. He looks to be safe from behind for now. But the question is who is in front of him? Fairly by 12.9. So he's off in his own little bubble right here. This is where you find drivers making fast laps. When they've got nobody around. When they can just focus on getting the best lap possible. Everyone thinks that it's going to be whenever they're slowly starting to catch up to somebody. No, that's whenever the biggest mistakes can happen, when they're trying to overdrive. As I say that, Hill Horse overdrives it on the exit of Lesmo 1, coming into Lesmo 2 now. Still squirrely coming out of Lesmo 2 as well. Coming down into the kink. Not much to do on this kink except take a breath, look at the trees. Take a look at your gauges as you fire down into Ascari. A bit of a shallow line coming through Ascari as we take a look over to Menacing Skull and the battle with Simcox behind. Menacing Skull coming down into Curva Grande. Simcox hungrily waiting for a Menacing Skull to make any sort of mistake so he can take that position, coming down into Lesmo 1. On the exit of Lesmo 1, both of them a little bit wide, perhaps a slight contact made. Simcox looking to the inside, coming into Lesmo 2. Doesn't find any purchase. Extends out right on the tail of that BMW, coming out onto the kink. Tries to look on the inside, coming down that straight, coming into that Ascari. Is he going to take a look on the inside? He looks like he does. Thinks better of it. And sticks behind the BMW coming through Ascari. Perhaps he can do something coming into Parabolica. Oh, Menacing Skull getting a little bit loose on the exit of Ascari. Now we take a ride along with the current last car on the grid, Partez. In the Alpha Sim Sport Audi R8 LMS, the number 462. You got to think, are they trying strategy now, or is there perhaps something wrong with the vehicle? As he comes in through Parabolica, looks nice and tidy and clean. No issues. Oh, a little bit squirrely coming on the exit, though. Coming into the main straight. Car decided to take a little bit of a snap turn on him. Coming down that main straight, trying to see if he's going to try to get that fleeting toe of the car ahead of him. Coming down into the heavy braking zone, coming to the first chicane. Everybody seems to make it through clean. As we see Badowski and Mad Al coming in. Partez making their way around. Curva Grande coming into that short straight, set them up for that second chicane. Heavy onto the brakes. A little bit twitchy under braking, coming through nice and clean. Extending out the exit just slight bit, coming into Lesmo 1. Nice and easy. Cutting back to Simcox now. As we see Menacing Skull slowly drifting off into the distance. Seems Simcox found a way around, coming through the kink, perhaps into Ascari itself. Coming down to the Parabolica now, nice and easy, no mistakes. Oh, a little bit of a squibble there, coming onto the main straight. Menacing Skull 1.5 behind, not quite into the toe. Simcox coming down into that first chicane, heavy into the brakes. Bit of a defensive line coming through. Onto the power coming out of that first chicane. Coming into Curva Grande now, setting up for that second chicane. Taking a bit of a wide line, saving up as much speed as possible. Heavy into the braking zone of the second chicane now. No mistakes this time, no overshooting it. Exits cleanly. As we swap over to Moore, looks like he's coming around Partez right now. Coming into that first chicane as he's trying to hunt down Shirley, not 3.3 ahead. Coming down into that second chicane. Not quite in the toe of Shirley as of yet. Everybody's nice and tidy coming through that second chicane, looking through the exit, extending out for the road as much as possible to gain any traction he can. Sending it a little bit deep into Lesmo 1. As it begins sucking up to the rear of the McLaren ahead of him of Shirley. Coming down into that kink now, he's well within the toe. You got to think, is he going to make a move coming into Ascari, or is he going to let it go until Parabolica? That Audi looking like it's on the charge now. Coming into the brakes for Ascari. Everybody seems quite content of staying where they are. Exit of Ascari, we shall see. Yes, he looks to the inside. Partez looking to make it 3 wide. Moore coming along the outside of Shirley, coming for a shot on the outside of Parabolica. Shirley looking a little bit to the inside, slightly touching the grass. Moore makes the move, stick on the outside, coming through into Parabolica, coming through on the outside, coming through onto the main straight. Shirley desperately trying to catch the toe behind him as Partez is well within the toe of Shirley. Taking for a look on the inside, coming into that first chicane. thinks better of it. Shirley trying to make up any ground that they can on Moore, trying to get that position back. So far, Shirley is down 0.3. But in the next sector, we shall see if that's extending, as yes it does, to a 0.5. So it looks like Shirley's going to have to make a move here soon to get the toe, or he's going to have to straighten up his lines. Catch up anytime he can in the braking zones. Coming down into Lesmo 1. Trying to make it as smooth as possible to gain any time he can back on Moore. Lesmo 2, just as smooth as Lesmo 1 on the exit, coming down into the kink. Well within the toe. Can he make a move coming into Ascari, or will he wait till Parabolic, or perhaps the next lap onto the first chicane? Partez coming from behind. Sucking up real close to the rear of that McLaren. Shirley coming through Ascari. Taking a look. Slowly starting to get out of that zone for catching the toe. Shirley coming down into Parabolica now, nice and easy. Not seeing any bit of squirreliness, any bit of understeer, nothing. Coming out onto the main straight. Still right in that no. As he comes across the line, we see he has dropped back to a 1.2, well out of the toe of Moore ahead. As Partez still looks like he wants to make a move. Whoa, Partez almost taking out Shirley into the braking zone. As Partez takes a spin here in the middle of the first chicane. Watch out on coming out onto this track. There's Badowski coming by you. Shirley looking to see if he can't make at least a little bit of ground back up, or at least try to mitigate that gap distance. If he's gonna lose, don't lose too much. Or if he's already resigned to be like, all right, I'm letting this battle go. There's still almost over an hour and a half of this race to go. So there shouldn't be too much of elbows out. As we look on now with Badowski, looking back onto Partez. Partez seems to have gathered themselves quite well from that spin. Looking on with Warrington now, number 304, Azuri Ekose Audi. Coming down the main straight. Do they have anybody around? Not from what we're seeing. It looks like we see Alexander perhaps ahead. Yes, that is Alexander, your current leader with 24 laps. A full lap ahead of second position in the Ferrari of Plate. That's quite impressive. You got to think, are they just going to compound on that gap now, or is it going to be mitigated by pit stops? Partez slow on the inside, coming down that main straight, coming into Parabolica. Looks like Badowski's a little bit loose coming on the outside, coming out of Parabolica onto the main straight. You got to think, is it about time for a driver change? Stint almost over. These tires have almost had, let's see here, well over an hour of racing done on these with varying conditions. You got to think they're starting to wear out right about now. Everyone's starting to think, all right, when are we going to take the gamble of making a pit stop? Who's going to take tires? Who's going to take only fuel? Now we're getting to that time of where strategy takes over for right now, until maybe 30 minutes left of the race, and then it's just elbows out. Everybody goes for it. This is your last 30 minutes. That's still over an hour away. As we look on with Millward, and that AMS Racing number 46 McLaren. Coming into Lesmo, out of Lesmo 1. Partez looking particularly hungry for the rear of that McLaren, willing to take that spot of any mistake given. Coming down into the main kink. Perhaps Partez will try to take a look up at the inside as we look out now on the rear of Hillhorst, coming up behind with Nate Newcomer. Newcomer trying to make as smooth of a line through Ascari as possible, make up that much time, cutting back to Millward and Partez. Partez eagerly awaiting a mistake from Millward to take that spot. Millward seeming to have a very good defense going on, going defensive into Parabolica. Millward taking it deep into Parabolica, allows Partez to catch up, coming up to the main straight, well within the toe. You got to see if Partez is going to make a move on the inside, coming into that first chicane. Millward knows he made a mistake coming out of Parabolica. Now you got to think, is he going defensive? It looks like he is, trying to plant that McLaren as wide as possible down the middle of the track. Partez thinks better of making a move coming into that first chicane. Looks like Newcomer eagerly at the heels of Hillhorst, eager to make a move going into Curva Grande. Millward seems to have a little bit of a 0.3 lead over Partez. Partez still within the rights of having a toe. Now to 0.7. If he keeps this up, Partez will be out of the toe and be out of his hair for quite a bit. Look, as we see Newcomer take the move around Hillhorst going into Lesmo 1. Willward driving it way deep into Lesmo 1, taking it off into the grass. As we look on with Hillhorst. Taking a wide line out of Lesmo 2, trying to make up any ground he can, coming back on to Newcomer. Newcomer just walking away from him, 0.6 right now, coming out of the kink. As we go into Ascari, you got to think, is he going to be able to increase that gap on the way out? Hillhorst back to a 0.9. As it looks to seem Newcomers just taking off to the races. Newcomers looking eagerly coming up to Mad Al next, who is less than half a second to a second ahead. And at the rate he's going, he'll easily catch up to him coming into the second chicane. Looking back on Newcomer, slowly taking away from Hillhorst in the distance in the spray. Newcomer could take a slight breath. Before he fires down into this, breaking into the first chicane. Easy does it. Looking back onto Hillhorst now, as we see he's starting to get under duress from Partez. Partez is particularly hungry for any position he can get. Coming through on Curva Grande, trying to set up for that second chicane. Partez sending it deep into the beginning of the second chicane, trying to make up any ground he can. Coming into Lesmo 1, everybody seems neat and tidy for now. Partez taking a little bit of a shallower exit. Hillhorst taking a wide line coming out of Lesmo 2, allowing Partez to take a little bit of a shallower line and catch up just a couple of milliseconds. Any bit of time is crucial here in this 2.4 hour endurance series. Coming down into Ascari now. Partez getting eagerly closer. As we look on with MO Plate, your second place in the Steady Start Racing Ferrari number 76. Coming down into the first chicane's braking zone as we cut over to Jack Alexander. Jack Alexander. Still very comfortable lead. A little bit of oversteer coming out of Lesmo 1. Settling down through that kink now. Still well within a pace, a comfortable pace for them. Coming into the braking zone of the second chicane. Nice and tidy coming through Ascari. No mistakes, no issues. Oh, a little bit of a wiggle coming on the coming out of Ascari. I need to watch myself there. I might have almost given him the commentator's curse. Coming down, he's coming down into Parabolica now. On to the braking. Seems very neat and tidy. Not wanting to make any mistakes after that little bobble coming out of Ascari. Coming out onto the main straight now. Still nice and tidy, easy and smooth. And now, the main straight. One of the only few places you can really catch your breath here at Monza. Coming down into the braking zone of the first chicane. Hard onto the brakes. Sets it up nicely, comes out cleanly. No wobbles, no anything. Coming into Curva Grande now. Still neat and tidy, not wanting to make any mistakes. Here we are looking on the back of Matt L. With Nate Newcomer eagerly lapping at his heels with a 0.9 deficit. Eagerly trying to get into that toe coming into Parabolica. As we look on with Jake Moore now. Who seems to be within their own little bubble of 3 seconds around the car ahead and the car behind. At least. The number 88 Audi for Racing Sim Tools Esport, the black team. Making a slight mistake coming into that first braking zone of the first chicane. Gets away cleanly, no issues, no damage, so it seems. Got to get your wits back about you after a mistake like that. Got to get yourself calmed back down coming into that braking zone of the second chicane. A little bit heavy, a little bit of snap oversteer coming into the beginning of that chicane. On the exit, looks nice and clean though, coming into Lesmo 1. Sets it up nicely. Nice and easy. Let's see how he looks on the exit. Chiding a little bit short as we see a car on the outside of Lesmo 1. I did not see who that was, but it seems somebody has sent it in a little bit too hard as we see Partez. And it looks Millward trying to take that spot back. Millward trying to look on the inside, thinks better of it coming into that second chicane. Partez looking specifically very calm and collected at this moment as he looks on the outs, coming to the exit of Lesmo 1. Oh, a little bit of a bobble as he set themselves up for Lesmo 2. Let's see how he comes. Swapping over to Matt Al with the battle with Newcomer. Newcomer on 0.3. Newcomer, a little bit of a bobble coming out of Ascari. He's going to dash his... Oh, Newcomer into the grass. What happened there? A little bit of a bobble, which we saw coming out of Ascari. Could have possibly sent him off into the grass and sent him with no direction, no sense of anything. He's just along for the ride at that point as we look on with Matt Al coming out of Parabolica now. A little bit of a bobble from Matt Al himself. Coming down that main straight, as we could see more and more of the drivers having issues with having sliding out from under them, as we look on with Ryan Warrington, who is fun coming out of Lesmo 2, taking a ride with Partez coming down the main straight. You got to think, as we think upon it, Warrington took that nasty hit into the guardrail. I wonder how many issues have come because of that with the suspension or aerodynamics as we look on with Newcomer trying to make up for his mistake, trying to claw his way back from that 5-second deficit from Matt Al. Coming in down into that second chicane braking zone, heavy onto the brakes. As we look, Matt Al actually took it way deep into that second chicane and actually had an issue himself as Newcomer comes back well within at least 3 seconds now. clawing his way back, making that time up, coming in through Lesmo 1, making that exit nice and tidy, no issues, no bobbles. Coming into Lesmo 2, a little bit of a bump under braking. As we look on with Millward, it seems to be Partez taking a little bit of trip through that second chicane, taking it a little bit too deep yet again. Millward coming in to Lesmo 2 right now, looking nice and tidy. A little bit of a slight bobble on the exit of Lesmo 2, coming down into that kink. Setting himself up for the braking zone, coming into Ascari. Coming into Ascari nicely, very smooth, not touching the end of the curb too much. With these rainy conditions, it'll kick the car out from under you. Coming onto that little straight, coming into Parabolica with a nice lead on Partez of a 1.6, well out of the tow range. Coming into the braking zone, Parabolica now setting himself up. Little bit of understeer coming through, turning into snap oversteer. Goodness. Easy, Millward. Cleaning it up now, coming onto the main straight, allowing Partez to sync up the gap of, I believe, half. Coming down now, taking a breath before firing down into the braking zone of the first chicane. Nice and easy. Getting through cleanly, coming through that first chicane, going into Curva Grande. Excuse me. Coming through Curva Grande cleanly, looking to make the best line possible, coming into that braking zone of this second chicane. Nice and easy does it. As he still begins to make more of a gap between him and Partez. Partez in the pits. Before we cut away from him coming over to Shirley, I saw Millward take a little bit of a bobble coming out of Lesmo 1. Looking on with Shirley now, trying to keep Badowski behind him coming into Parabolica. Badowski trying to look on the inside. Well within that range for the tow. Millward taking a dive, but unsuccessful, driving it too deep, allowing Badowski to come sucking up into the back of that McLaren, coming onto the main straight. Badowski unfortunately unable to make up any purchase or any move coming onto the main straight. He's within 0.7, right up that gap before making a move within the tow. As we cut over to Nimzowski, or back over to Badowski. I have no idea why it cut over to Nimzowski if there was no battle happening. Looking on with Badowski now, trying to make a move on Shirley. Coming into Curva Grande, you got to wonder if he's going to try to make up a move here in the braking zone coming into the second chicane. Shirley looking like it had a little bit of a bobble coming out of that exit of Curva Grande into the braking zone of the chicane. That spray making it hard to see braking zones. Little bit of oversteer coming out of the exit for Badowski. MO Plate making a move around Fredrickson, it looks like. Has taken over for Patez on their outlap. Plate within a 1.6 of more ahead. Well, not within the tow, but well within any striking range if any mistakes occur. Coming through Ascari cleanly, no issues. Little bit of a bobble on the exit there, getting it too much on those rumble strips with it being wet. Coming down into Parabolica now. On the brakes. They trying to make it through Parabolica right now is like an ice rink with that much rain and the weather. Trying to make it as clean as possible as we ride along with Jack Alexander, your leader now for 32 laps. Just making a getaway with this race today. Nemcovsky with the drive-through racing 193 Lamborghini Huracan. Quite an interesting paint job on there. That copper and green, very pleasing to the eye. Coming out of Curva Grande now, looking to come into the braking zone of this second chicane. Heavy onto the brakes. Nice and tidy through here. Making his way on into Lesmo 1. Setting himself up into Lesmo 2. Taking a nice and tidy line. Not too sharp. Thinning out just enough to get any purchase he can. Coming into Lesmo 2 right now. Making his exit. Dipping a little bit wide. As we see what seems to be more coming up behind with the 2.3 deficit. Slowly gaining time as we go along. Coming down into Ascari now, heavy on the braking. No mistakes. Little bit of a bobble coming out of Ascari. Looks like he clipped that inner rumble strip a little bit too hard. As we look back with Alexander, just making this look like an absolute Sunday drive. Easy does it coming through that second chicane. At this point, it's just mitigating what gap he has. He doesn't really need to go for any more. He's just making his time, riding around. Looks like we've got a caution. Unfortunately, I can't see where that caution is. Looks like to be ahead of Alexander. It looks to be Fredrickson getting a little loose. Seems to be, oh my goodness, as we cut back to Shirley, and it seems to be a bombs went off with how many cars are standing stationary in the middle of that first chicane. I counted no more than 4 standing still when we cut over to them. As we see Nate Newcomer trying to fight. Who is that ahead? It looks like Plate with the Ferrari falling back with that issue with the 4 vehicles on the first chicane. Here we are riding with Simcox, looking at, looks like Mad Al. Simcox coming into the braking zone, looking tidy, a little bit of a wobble under braking. Extends out nicely coming through, making his way into Lesmo 1, taking the exit slightly shallow, making his setup for Lesmo 2, coming through the making a little bit of a bobble coming out of Lesmo 2, extending out a little bit too much. As of now, Mad Al has nothing to worry about. Simcox is back at least 1.7, perhaps 8, coming through Ascari now. As long as Mad Al makes no mistakes, he shouldn't be able to catch up into the tow. While these two are not fighting for position, it still takes its toll on the racer as they are being passed, and automatically makes them think, oh, I've got to go back into fighting this battle. But I'm not sure if Al is aware of the car behind him of Simcox being not on the same lap, and if Simcox wants to take that spot, if it was me, I'd let him go. I'm not going to fight him. Simcox trying hard onto the braking zone, sucking right on up into the rear of Mad Al's BMW. Matt Al extending back out that lead though on the exit. He may not have went into the corner faster, but he sure exited it quicker. As they come through Curva Grande now, setting themselves up for the braking zone of that second chicane. Simcox absolutely sending it and over sending it into that second chicane as he goes off to the runoff area. Comes across those rumble strips, coming back onto the line. Now we got to think Matt Al. He sees that. You got to worry now. Is he going to try to send it too hard, and is he going to take both of us out? Come next time he tries to make a move. Simcox still there, still wanting to make a move, still hungry for that position. Matt Al just trying to keep him at arm's length. Coming down into Ascari now. Simcox again sucking up to the back of that BMW in the braking zones. And as we see again and again, Matt Al with the grunt and torque of that BMW just taking off from him. As we see Fredrickson taking a loop on that second chicane. We didn't see exactly what happened, but we just cut to him in the middle of the chicane as he comes back out onto the track now, coming into Lesmo 1. Is there any issues with that Audi? Is there any suspension deals as he comes very nearly close to clipping that in their wall? As we take a ride with Shirley now in that Garage 59 number 4 McLaren. As we look on with MO plate and Moore actually getting into a battle now. Moore all over the back of that Ferrari. Coming down into Curva Grande. Plate trying to keep defensive coming into this second chicane. Moore, is he going to take a look on the inside in the braking zone? No, he is not. As we look ahead and we see Newcomer and Badowski duking it out as well. Here comes Plate with Moore 0.2 behind. Plate's got to make a move here in these corners if he wants to get in a little bit of a gap to fend off from that toe. Exit seems to be fine. Moore takes a little bit of a shallower line, costing him precious milliseconds. Coming down through the kink now, it doesn't look to be making up any room at all. Coming down into Ascari, the braking zone. Will he make a move? Not really trying to close the gap in the braking zone. More content where he's at. Probably going to make a move coming into Parabolica on that straight or into that first chicane. Plate beginning to extend out to 0.6 now. Plate can keep it up. Well, on the main straight, they should have no toe from behind. As I say that, Moore closes the gap slightly coming into Parabolica. Trying to keep a tighter line. That didn't pay off very well. It looks like he's now 0.7 behind, well out of that toe range. As we look on with Nemzovsky in that Huracan. Still nobody around. He's well within a 9-second bubble between him and Shirley. Continue to click off laps, trying to make the perfect lap, trying to catch up to Alexander. Coming into that second chicane, nice and easy. A little bit of a bobble with hitting that inner rumble strip. As we look and see Nate Newcomer trying to make a look on the inside, coming into that second chicane. Oh, Shirley's coming on, actually made a mistake coming into that second chicane, jumping over the curb, slowing him up as we see Badowski and Newcomer come bearing down on him. Newcomer looking wide. Coming into Lesmo 2, setting himself up for that kink. See if he can't get that toe coming out into Ascari. There you look, he's already looking on the inside. See if he can't calculate a move. Shirley trying to get away from both of them. Coming down into the braking zone as we see what happens. Badowski, shallow line. Nate Newcomer coming a little bit wider coming into the Ascari. Podolsky taking no chances and goes through with a very fine edge line. Podolsky coming down into parabolic, and now a little bit of a wobble under braking. Coming out, exiting parabolic, and now as we move over to Martin Schaefer, seems to be... That was Alexander they passed. Yes, it was. They were passing the leader to unlap themselves, it seems to be. Schaefer was our winner of our last race over at Snetterton. He soloed it. Congratulations to him. Let's see if he can pull something out today and come back from maybe a win with Monza with just over an hour left. Schaefer coming down into the braking zone of Ascari. Quite a bit of damage to the front of that BMW. It seems like the boys in the pits couldn't quite make all the repairs that was needed. Coming down to that straight, going down into parabolic, and now seems to be opening up a gap to Alexander. Of course, why would Alexander fight this? This is a lap car unlapping themselves. This isn't for position. Schaefer looking clean for the most part coming into the main straight from Parabolica. As we see Podolsky coming out of the pits as well. Coming down into that heavy braking zone, coming into that first chicane. Blue flags waving for Schaefer. Although he is creating a gap between him and the one who is supposed to be lapping him. Schaefer's just trying to make clean laps here. Get some points on the board, get some experience around a wet Monza. Going into the heavy braking zone, coming into that second chicane. A little bit of a shallow line. Hopping the curb both on the entrance and mid corner. As we see Helmet, I believe Helmet took over. Yes, this seems like Helmet has taken over for Podolsky and the skid lid race team. Number 55 Porsche 911 GT3R. As you see out in the background, also going off into the sand trap. Helmet, is everything all right? Is there perhaps some issue with the car? Suspension issue? We'll hear back from him maybe later after the race. As we still look on with Schaefer here coming through Ascari. A little bit of a bobble mid corner. Exit though looks to be just fine. A little bit of an extension. Coming down into Parabolica. A little bit of a breath of relief. Going down into the braking zone of Parabolica now. Nice and tidy, not a bobble on braking entry. Mid corner still looks just fine. Exit, let's see how he does. I see no bobble coming off to the main straight now. Still trying to make the look to make clean laps as we've got a yellow in sector 1, it looks like. What seems to be the issue up ahead? Schaefer taking that first chicane quite delicately, trying to limp that BMW around. As we look up, we have Emma Plate taking a spin in the middle of the first chicane, crawling their way back onto the racetrack now as we take a ride with Christian Mueller in the number 2 DSRT SimX Pro Audi coming down into that first chicane. Nice and tidy. How does he look on the exit? Still just as tidy. Not having to take any chances here with Mueller. Coming down into Curva Grande now. Still just a slight bobble there mid-corner. Taking it along the outside now. Trying to set himself up back up to optimum line coming into that second chicane. Heavy under braking. Seems to take the line just well, staying well away from those big sausage curbs. This seems to be a leisurely drive as of now. He's got a 13.4 deficit ahead of him. So he just needs to put his head down and just start putting out clean laps. Trying to gain as much time as he can, but don't overpush himself or the car. Coming down through the kink now. Breathing a sigh of relief. He's got his own little bubble, his own little world. Coming under the bridge. Brief respite from the rain constantly hitting the windows. He's down into the braking zone of Ascari. No bobbles. Oh, I can't tell if that was net code on my end, but I saw a slight bit of a bobble with him might have eating that inner sausage curb. As we take a ride back with Schaefer again, coming down to Main Straight. Interesting camera view we got here. I believe this is the front bumper of Schaefer here, coming down into that braking zone. Moving up to Shirley here in that number 4 Garage 59 McLaren, setting well within the 3rd position right now. Sitting there comfortably with a 13-second deficit over 4th place. Shirley should also put his head down and go ahead and might try to make as many clean laps as possible. This is getting down to the time of you're going to want to be close to that person ahead of you for gaining track position, as we're slowly coming down to getting well under an hour. We got just over an hour now with racing left. But once it starts getting down to that 20 and 15 minute mark, everybody's elbows are going to come out and it's going to be, well, I thought I saw a spot. I thought I saw a gap. And who knows? There could be a little bit more rubbing than necessary, and we might have to have the marshals take a look at some of these contacts that may come up soon, coming into the last few minutes of the race. As we look at Shirley coming down into Ascari now, nice and clean, no issues. Swapping over to Helmet now, trying to chase down Butler. Butler swapping over for, I believe, Nate Newcomer. Yes, it is. Josh Butler swapping in for Nate Newcomer in that AMR V8 Vantage, the number 7 for the Commune Racing. Helmet eagerly trying to chase down Butler, but he has a 1.4 deficit, so it may not look that well. As we look at Mueller, perhaps behind. Who is that? I can't see into the mist. Whoever it is having quite the understeer issues. No, it's Butler. Helmet got around Butler while we weren't looking. Butler having a bit of a understeer issue coming through Parabolica. Helmet in that Manthey Racing number 55 Porsche coming into the braking zone of that first chicane, setting up nicely, no issues, no bobbles, exits just fine. As we see Butler trying to make up any ground possible. Butler still within that 1.1 range. If he can get in a couple of good braking zones on Butler or Mueller, excuse me, Helmet, as he takes another trip to the sandbar. This isn't the beach. You're not supposed to be up in the sand playing. As he makes his way back onto the track, as we swap over to Ian Simcox in that number 25 Golden Oldies Lamborghini Huracan. Excuse me. I'm coming back now. He's coming down into that braking zone of the second chicane as we swap over to Shirley coming into Parabolica now. Shirley looks like he seems to be coming under attack from Schaefer, who is 2 laps down, eagerly trying to make up as much time as he can. Shirley well within the 3rd place spot. Might as well just let him go by. There's no use to putting both of the cars at risk. As we see Shirley taking a defensive line down through Parabolica as we come along onto the main straight. Schaefer sucking up to the back of that McLaren using the tow. Is Schaefer going to make a move on the inside coming into this first chicane? He looks to the inside. Riding along with Shirley now, looking relaxed as ever. Coming down into that braking zone. Seems that Schaefer has taken the move, although there may have been a little tap between Nathan and Schaefer. Who knows? I didn't see the cars become upset, but there might have been just a slight contact. We'll have to see. Shirley letting Schaefer go. There's no point in fighting it. Shirley taking a wide line coming out of there. Wheels just slightly cutting into the grass, coming down into the braking zone of this section chicane. Cutting that sausage curb just a little bit too much, coming onto the inside. Exits just fine though, coming down into Lesmo 1. Taking quite the shallow line coming through Lesmo 1. How is he going to take Lesmo 2? Sets himself up. Seems just fine on the entrance. Taking slightly more of a shallow line yet again. As we see behind him is Mad Al. Bringing up the rear in that number 69 BMW. Schaefer just surely needs to just go ahead and just relax. You still got plenty of just under an hour of racing. He's got his own little bubble. He's got a 7.6 on my screen. Yes, 7.6 deficit ahead of him of Moore, which we've got Mad Al between him and Moore right now. So if everything plays out correctly and he just continues making time, we'll see that climb up to 10 seconds here within the next lap. Surely hunting down that 193 Lamborghini Huracan of Zaker. Coming down the main straight now. Taking a breath of relief. No corners. Just straights. Coming down to that braking zone. Coming to that first chicane. Seems just as nice and easy. As we look over now, as the driver swap has changed over to Dominic. I do not know how to say that last name. Mirzajuski? We're just going to call you Dominic. I apologize. I cannot say that last name over and over again. So Dominic here coming into, still leading the lap now on lap 42. We cut over to Ian Simcox now in the Golden Oldies number 25 Lamborghini Huracan. Making his way down the main straight as we cut back over to Dominic in that first place position. Fighting off Fairley right now. Not for position. I think he should just let Fairley go. Oh, it looks like we got Dominic out off into the grass for some reason. What happened there? Dominic, we're taking a ride along with you right now. Seems to be taking it just nice and easy through Parabolica as we see now coming onto the main straight. Just a little bit of a oversteer. Now he seems to be able to keep it under control as he comes down into the braking zone of the first chicane. Let's see how he is. A little bit of a bobble under braking, but nothing much. Sets up that corner nicely. How's he going to take the exit? Just as fine. He's looking good to keep up that lead as of now. Coming down into that braking zone of that second chicane, looking neat and tidy coming in. Mid corner looks tidy. On the exit, still tidy as well. Nothing out of place here for that first place Porsche. Making it easy cut into the Lesmo 1. Little bit of a bobble coming on the exit. I do believe that everybody is stretched out far enough that we're not going to be cutting to a battle anytime soon. So while there's this chance, I'm going to take a few-minute commentary break, and I will be right back with you within, I say, 5 minutes. So while I'm gone, enjoy the sounds of the ambiance of Monza in the rain. And we are back. And it seems while I was gone, I've received reports that the number 4 McLaren of Shirley has been disqualified. I have not received what details as to what the disqualification has been for, but we do see that he is indeed disqualified. I will see if I can't get any type of post-race information for you all. See if I can't get a word with Shirley at the end of the race. See what exactly went wrong and why. As we're looking on the back of Butler now, looking back and see what looks like Mueller 1.2 back coming down into Parabolica now. Into the braking zone. Mueller looking to see if Butler's going to make any sort of mistake as we ride along the back of Schaefer now coming out of that first chicane. Schaefer making a steady move up into 8th now as he's well onto the attack of Madley in that lone Ferrari. Slowly making up time anywhere he can. Coming into that second chicane now, easy on the brakes. Entrance, middle, and exit seemed nice, tidy. Setting himself up for Lesmo 1. A little bit of a bobble coming out on the exit of Lesmo 1 before firing off into Lesmo 2. Now see how he's going to exit on this one. Again, so a light bit of a bobble there, riding that rumble strip, a little bit risky here on that wet condition. Firing on down into Ascari now as we swap over to RWB Flack. How you doing, Flack? Taking over that number 276, the Beware of the Hulk team. Partnered also with RWB Audi, I believe. Yes, that's true. As we swap over to Josh Butler now, and our Motorsport number 97 Aston Martin. I apologize. Speaking of Audi, there's the Audi of Mueller right behind in a 1.3 deficit coming through Ascari. As Butler tries to escape Ascari, pushing a little bit to the extreme on the exit. As we look over here with Fredrickson now with heavy damage on the front of that Audi. Coming through Curva Grande. You have to wonder with that heavy hit of the wall earlier, how is that affecting the car as we see Josh Butler fending off from Mueller right now, trying to fight off that position as Mueller gets by him coming through on Parabolica, but Butler comes trying to fight back on the exit of Parabolica, coming onto the main straight. Well within the toe of Mueller. See if he's going to make a move onto the inside, coming in to that braking zone of that first chicane. Looks to the outside instead. Is he going to try to make the move stick? Firing down into the braking zone. He lets Mueller have it. Mueller overcooking it, actually, going into that first chicane. Cuts back onto the track. Is he going to give up that position, or is he going to take that penalty? Mueller still well ahead of Butler here, but only 2.2 ahead coming into the braking zone of that second chicane. Anything can happen. Butler makes contact, and the stewards are going to want to take a look at that one after the race. There's going to be a little bit of there's going to have to be some discussion about that. There was a little bit too much of aggressive late braking as we ride along with Dominic seeming to look a little bit loose coming out of Parabolica onto that main straight. Let's see how he sets himself up for this first the braking zone for this first chicane. Coming in hot and heavy, hard onto the brakes. Makes a nice smooth turn in, no jerky movements. Hits the exit just right and powers on through, coming off on into Curva Grande. Just another walk in the park for Dominic as he comes into the braking zone of that second chicane. Nice and easy. Don't want to make any mistakes. Lose any time that he has. Advantaged over any of these other drivers. Easy coming into Lesmo 1, making his exit also just as easy. Any bobble? No, just extending out as much as possible without risking himself. Coming into Lesmo 2 now. How's he going to fare the exit of this one? Again, extending but not too much. Coming down into the kink now, well ahead of everybody, well within his own bubble. Moving on over to Fairley, coming through Ascari now. And that AMS Racing number 46 McLaren. Who would be the one that he's in behind right now? Who are you near, Fairley? I believe it's Zaker, the number 2 position Lamborghini, as he's closing in, trying to make that spot back, or at least unlap himself as much as possible. Coming down the main straight. Is he going to try to get into the toe to make a move come next lap, coming down into that first chicane? We'll see, as Zaker seems to be finding issue with trying to get around Flack. Fairly coming through nice and clean, no bobbles, no issues. Switching over to Flack now as we see Zaker trying to come down on him. Or is that Madley? I am so sorry, that is actually Madley. And that number 76 Ferrari bearing down on Flack, and that number 276 Audi for Beware of the Hulk race team seems to cook it just a slight bit too much, as you could see Madley come and take up all that time that was soaked up by that bad line. Madley looking to the inside, coming into Lesmo 1, still looking to the inside, exiting. They're still side by side. Looks like Madley could have the splitter ahead, coming into the inside of the corner, giving each other room. Madley seemed to have made the pass, coming down through the kink now. Flack not giving him that room that easily though, as he's coming back, trying to make a move, see if he can't want to look inside, coming into this braking zone to the second chicane. He thinks better of it as we were riding along with Fairley now. Oh, it looks like Flack actually had a bit of a bobble coming into Ascari, allowing Fairley to come by and actually losing precious time on Madley to make that spot back. Coming down the main straight now. Fairley trying to get any room and claw back any time that he can from Madley, trying to get any positions he can back. While we see Flack trying to mitigate any damage that was caused from his earlier mistake coming out of Lesmo 1. Oh, it looks like we've got actually a spin as Fairley plows into the side of Madley as he spins in the middle of the first chicane. Gotta wonder if that hit, was there any damage to either of the vehicles? Doesn't look to see any cosmetic damage. And I'm seeing that the vehicles look like they're running just fine, so it looks like it was just a minor tap. Flack trying to make up any time he can. Tries, cooks it a little bit too hard, spins out into the middle of the corner. Madley making up that spot again. As we see Dominic taking over that, lapping Madley again. Dominic just easily extending that lead as much as possible. As we're riding along with Helmet, coming down the main straight. Helmet, who is your nearest competitor? It seems to be... who knows? Scoring on my side is showing 2 laps for the next person. Behind you with Helmet. Oh, now it's showing 17.7. You got quite a good of a lead here on that next car. use that time wisely as we're riding with Warrington coming into that first chicane. Nice and easy, no mistakes. Not like Madley, coming in a little bit too hot. Here we are riding with Warrington now, going into Curva Grande. Nice and easy, despite these wet conditions. And again, it looks like we've all just started spreading out again, where there's no real battles, or none for position, unfortunately, as we have Fredrickson going into the pits now. See if he can't get any of that damage taken care of on that vehicle, as we see Warrington getting a little bit loose coming out of Lesmo 1. Lesmo 2 taking a little bit of a wider line as well, pushing it to the absolute edge, trying to get any time he can back. 8.3 behind Helmet here. Coming into Ascari, nice and easy. Tiptoeing that rumble strip, just that fine line as we look at Matt Out coming through that first chicane, powering on into Curva Grande. Coming down to that second chicane braking zone, coming back over, looking out at Butler, catching up to Simcox, willing to make a move, even though it's not for position. Any bit of track time gained on the other competitors is everything ventured. Coming into Curva Grande now, trying to see if he can make a move on Simcox. Coming into that second chicane, nice and easy, don't want any mistakes. Seems to be making up quite a bit of time on Simcox ahead as we swap over to Christian Mueller. Fighting with, I believe, is Fredrickson again. Christian Mueller makes that move seem easy as we swap over to Schaefer coming onto that main straight, and I see nobody around him, no issues. Swapping over to Justin Madley now, with Flack still trying to take that position back from the earlier bobble. Coming onto Curva Grande now. Swapping back over to Mueller for having a battle with, I believe, still Fredrickson. Now, okay, cameras, can we find one person and stay there, cameras, please? Thank you. Riding along with Schaefer now, coming on to Mad Al. Swapping over to Mad Al now as he's coming into that braking zone of that first chicane. Nice and easy. Don't want no bobbles, no anything under braking, especially in these conditions. Nice and smooth. He has nobody around him, but that doesn't mean that he can't make up precious time being as smooth as possible in these conditions. Coming out through Curva Grande now, shooting off into that braking zone of that second chicane. Heavy onto the brakes, coming down in there. Nice and easy, no mistakes. A little bit of a bobble hitting that sausage on the inside, coming out. Going into the straight, coming into Lesmo 1. How is he going to fare? Nice and easy, no bobbles. Takes a little bit of a shallow exit, probably to keep the car up front underneath him. Firing off into Lesmo 2. Is he going to extend out this time? Extends out just slightly. Those left tires barely grazing that rumble strip so he doesn't lose any traction. Now we're riding along with Fairley again, coming down into that braking zone of the first chicane. And he overcooked it. At least he went through the escape road, no damage done to the vehicle or anyone else around him. Looking on with Madley now, trying to catch up to Dominic, as we see also Flack trying to catch up with Madley. Moore coming across now out of Parabolica onto the main straight. Nobody around, just he seems to be, excuse me, seems to be nobody around, no issues with him just putting down quick laps, quick and clean. That's the rule of the game here in wet weather. Again, no issues coming through that first chicane, firing off into Curva Grande. Keeps it nice and tidy through there. Heavy onto the brakes into the braking zone of that second chicane. Makes no mistake. Makes no error. Puts through there just like a knife through hot butter. Going through here, coming into Lesmo 1. See how he takes on the end. Middle is fine. How is he going to exit? Don't get to see as we cut back over to Ian Simcox coming through that first chicane. Ian has been relatively under the radar all day, but he's been out there putting in laps, and there he is. Last time we saw him, just less than an hour ago, he was well within 13th place, but he's easily brought himself up to 9th as we swap over to Mad Al. As we see Partez back in number 462 Audi, swapping him back over to Ryan Warrington. And sees nobody around him. He's easily putting in good laps, good steady laps for this conditions. Steady is the way to go. You don't need to be all out from the very get-go. Here we come back over to Matt Al as he exits the Scari. Swapping back over to Dominic as he exits the first chicane. Going into Curva Grande now. No mistakes. Nice and calm as he's catching up to Fairley here in that McLaren. We had to know, is Fairley going to let him go without a fight, or is Dominic going to have to bull his way through, coming through that second chicane nice and easy, no mistakes. Coming into Lesmo 1. Takes a bit of a wide, a little bit of a bobble on the exit. Going into Lesmo 2, how is he going to fare? Bit of a wide exit. Luckily, he didn't have any wheel spin on that as we were riding back with Ian Simcox. As we see that the rain seems to have stopped, but the track is still very wet, although I can see a bit of a dry line starting to slowly form as we're riding along with Marvin Zaker, taking what looks to be a fight with Moore, perhaps. Is that who we're looking at, or is that... Who is that? I can't tell. If I'm not mistaken, that was the number 2 Audi of Hillhorst. I believe so. Anyway, Zaker's coming through, makes the pass, no issue whatsoever. Coming down into Parabolica now, and we see that Hillhorst is just letting him go. He's not going to fight him. There's no reason to. There's only getting down to 30 minutes left in this 2.4 hour here at Monza. As we can see, it looks like Hillhorst taking the wide line, a bit more wet, and got the rubble there from the rubber and everything like that. It's going to make you a very slick time out there. As we're watching Zaker here come down into the braking zone of that first chicane. Nice and easy. As we can very well see a dry line slowly starting to form. So if this is going to be what it's like, is it going to be a mad scramble for conserving wet tires on dry ground, or are we going to see a scramble for pits for dries for the last few laps? Zaker pushing it out wide coming into that braking zone, trying to get up every single inch he can. Makes a mistake on the inner sausage, but gathers it back up without too much of a fuss. Here as we take a look at Martin Schaefer taking a pass that seems to be on Mad Al. Schaefer doing his best with what he was getting given today as we swap over to Hillhorst. Still trying to make a move, and he sends himself off from Lesmo 2 out into the sand trap as we see Moore capitalizing on his mistake and steadily making his way on to make a move on Zaker. Coming out of Ascari now, seems to be no issue. Doesn't seem to cut it too close. Sending it down that short straight between Ascari and Parabolica. Heavy onto the brakes into the braking zone. Cuts it nice and tight. Slowly keeps it nice and tight. Not really going to give much of a room for anybody to take that inside line. Comes back out onto the straight. Tries to distance himself from Hill Horse to make sure he doesn't catch the toe. Comes into that heavy braking zone for that first chicane. Neither one of those two Audis having an issue coming through as they slowly begin to rocket their way through the Curva Grande. Coming back now, still looking at more as he's coming into Lesmo 1. How is he going to fare? Nice and tidy on the exit. No bobbles, no issues. Looking back onto a little bit more of Hill Horse, taking an even wider line. More making it through Lesmo 2 just as nice. Hill Horse still taking quite the major extreme outer line coming through out of the Lesmo 1 and 2. He needs to be careful with that. He could catch more water underneath his tires than he really bargained for. Coming down into Ascari now as we watch more clip that inner curb just a little bit. Doesn't seem to upset the car too much. Exiting Ascari, extending out just a little bit, nothing too serious. Making his way down into Parabolica. Heavy onto the brakes, trying to keep that inside line yet again. Moore only 4.1 behind Zaker and slowly making his way toward him. Perhaps we can be able to see a good battle between those two in the coming last few moments of the race. Before firing himself down into that braking zone right now, hopefully not overcooking it. As you can see, Zaker in the frame right for a split second before leaving again as he's catching up. Right back down to a 4.4. It was 4.7. He's making a steady move up onto that Lamborghini, ready to take that spot. We'll swap over to Ryan Warrington now. Seems to be trying to fend off Partez. No, I apologize. It looks like Mad Al. I apologize on that. Jaffer just making his way downtown. Nice and easy. Right now, it's all about defend that position. Swapping over to Ian Simcox coming through that first chicane. Coming down into Curva Grande right now. That Lamborghini Huracan looking firmly planted to the ground. Swapping over to Marvin Shaker as we look back, and as you can see in the frame behind him, the nose of Moore. As we see that Zaker is taking the lead. What happened to Merzejewski? That I'm attempting the word again. Merzejewski. Something happened to our leader. He's no longer the leader anymore as we're coming up with Madley now. Coming down into Main Straight, coming into that heavy braking zone, coming into that first chicane. Heavy under the brakes. Swapping back over to Moore now. 4.4 still behind Zaker. Coming into the pits now. Looks like he's going to go ahead and go for either a tire change or some fuel for a last second splash. Swapping back over to Zaker, our current leader, over lap number 57. Coming down to that first chicane. Trying not to send it in too hard to lose up any time that he has gained. Shaker still having no issues as to what it seems coming down into Curva Grande now, shooting out firing himself down into that braking zone for that second chicane. Still no issue, no bobble. Well put through line coming in through that second chicane as he takes that short straight coming into Lesmo 1. Sets himself up for a nice exit. Extends out just a little bit, not wanting to go too far. Coming into Lesmo 2 now. Again, extending out just slightly. Coming down through that kink straight. Down underneath that bridge. Coming out, firing himself down into the braking zone of Ascari. Again, no issues, nice and tidy. Not wanting to create any issues, not wanting to create any problems. He's got the lead, he wants to keep it. Going down into Parabolica now. Heavy under the brakes. Setting himself for that inside line. As he pulls into the pits, who is going to be the new leader? As we see, I believe, Dominic coming around now onto the main straight. Here comes Martin Schaefer now coming around what seems to be Millward as they come onto the main straight as he's trying to get the toe from, I believe, Crockett. Yes, he's trying to get the toe from Crockett, trying to make the move on the inside coming into this big braking zone. Thinks better of it. Comes down, hits the brakes. Oh, it looks like that McLaren has a little bit too much of a lockup coming into that main braking zone, almost taking out Schaefer. Schaefer still looking hungry for that position in front of him that Crockett provides. Coming out of Curva Grande now, going into that second braking zone for that second chicane. Riding along with Helmet now, coming along the main straight. As we're winding down into the last 25 minutes of race time, this is whenever everybody's going to have their elbows out. It's going to be claw for all positions. So you're going to see a lot more rubbing. You're going to see a lot more agitation from drivers as they try to make moves. Helmet here trying to come out of that first chicane nice and tidy, followed by our RWD Flack. And that number 276 Audi for there you go. Still riding along. Helmet here coming out of Lesmo 1 going into Lesmo 2 right now. Takes it a bit wide. Not a single bobble though as he comes down into the kink. You can still see RWB Flack there in the background with Shaker here still behind him. Coming down into that braking zone for Ascari. Turns in nice and tight. Comes through the mid corner and the exit just fine. As we swap over to Dominic, who has retaken the lead. That's some quite big good strategy there. Lost the lead for all of maybe 5 laps and then back into it after everybody shuffles through with pit stops. Trying to make up any more room and ground he can, trying to build that bubble yet again. Coming through on that second chicane, nice and tidy. A little bit of a bobble on the exit, nothing major though. You can still see that dry line happening. I believe a lot of the people that you saw duck into the pits might have actually swapped over to dries. Dominic taking a little bit of a curb hop there coming into Lesmo 2 as we're watching over with Helmet now coming out into Curva Grande. Still nobody really around as we swap over to Shaker, who is right behind Flack. who could provide a good tow for him to get up any more positions trying to fight back on Dominic. Flying into that braking zone, heavy on the brakes, trying to get as much time as he can. Still nice and smooth coming through that second chicane, no issues. Swapping over to Madley right now in that number 25 Ferrari. Looking just as good as he did this last race, setting himself up nicely as we're swapping over to Hillhorst, who's now in 5th place, trying to hunt down Madley, but he's got a 28-second deficit. That's quite a bit of a time to build back up here in just about under 20 minutes. Riding with Hillhorst again as he's coming out of that first chicane. A little bit of a bobble on the exit. Coming down into Curva Grande. Seems to be slowly filtering his way out wide. Coming down into that braking zone for the second chicane. Heavy onto the brakes. Bit of a shallow entry. Exits just fine, and so is the mid corner going down into Lesmo 1. Sets the car up just right. How's he going to do on the exit? Extending out as much as possible. Riding on with Crockett now. Looks like he has... Where are they at? Butler in his sights. Crockett looking, trying to steal that position away from Butler. Butler says, no thank you, I'm shutting the door on you. Coming through the kink now. Crockett still looks like he wants to have a move up the inside coming into Ascari. Will he take it or will he say, no, I think I'll wait. Looks like he's going to wait for now. Maybe he'll take a move either into Parabolica or that first chicane after that long main straight. Coming out of Ascari now, extending out just a little bit, trying to eke out as much speed as he can. Still within the toe of Butler. Coming down into Parabolica now. You think he's going to try to make a move on the inside? He makes a look. Thought better of it. Butler's going on a defensive. Crockett's still going to take that outer line and try to bend his way back in. Still within the toe of Butler ahead. And let's see if he makes a move coming into this heavy braking zone into this first chicane. Crockett sucking up to the back of that Aston Martin ahead, looking to the inside. Is he going to take this? Is he going to take the chance, or is he going to tuck back in? He looks like he tucks back in, but it all for naught. Butler went ahead and overcooked it going into that chicane and took the runoff road. As we ride with Millward in that AMS Racing number 46 McLaren, out in 12th place. Again, he's in his own little bubble. He's got nobody around. Go ahead and click off as many great laps as you can. As I say that, he overcooks it into that first chicane. Nearly gets it stuck in the grass. Keep it moving. Don't get stuck. Riding along with RWB Flack now in that number 276. Audi. Coming down on that main straight now. Heavy under the brakes, and then that first major braking zone into the first chicane. Seems to put it in just right. Exits just as well. Nothing out of the ordinary for another day in the office for Flack. Coming down through Curva Grande. Going to set himself up real nicely for that braking zone coming into that second chicane. Heavy on the brakes now. A little bit of a bobble going into the braking. As we see Ian Simcox coming out of downtown, coming with a surge coming into that braking zone. Ian Simcox looking to the inside, trying to go to Lesmo 1. Thinks better of it. Maybe he'll take a look on Lesmo 2 or coming into the Ascari. Takes a little bit of a shallower line. Coming out, going into Lesmo 2, a little bit under the brakes, a little bit later. Ian Simcox really trying to give it to him. Coming into the kink, he looks like he's going to try to make a move to the outside. Flack giving him the room. Here's the question, is Ian going to really try to make a move along the outside coming into Ascari? He takes it a little bit deeper into the braking zone and just takes the spot away from Flack just as easy. Flack coming through just fine, coming through Ascari. His exit could be a little bit further out, but I think he's just all trying to preserve what he's got right now, not trying to fight back on Ian Simcox. But he's well within the range for the toe. Maybe he can think of something coming along the main straight, coming into that first chicane. Flack trying to get that time back on Ian Simcox any way he can. Coming onto the main straight now. Is he still within that? No, he is not. He is not within the toe. He is 1.1 back. The toe is about 0.6 to 0.7. That's about as far as you can get before you get nothing from the car ahead. Coming down now, riding with Jake Moore in that number 88 Racing Sim Tools eSport Black Team sponsored Audi. Coming out now, deep into the braking zone of that first chicane. Sets it up nicely. Doesn't seem to be any issue coming out. And I believe I'm receiving reports of Mad Owl also being disqualified. I'll have to get more information and let you guys know toward the end of the race for what caused that, as we're getting down to the last 15 minutes now. Jake Moore firing down into that second chicane. Nice and easy does it. No mistakes. Coming down into Lesmo 1, sets himself up nicely. Seems to be a little bit wet coming out on the exit of Lesmo 1 and to the entrance of Lesmo 2. As we see a little bit of bobble back there from Helmet. Moore firing down into Ascari a little bit later on the braking than normal. Takes a nice line through Ascari, extends out just right, getting as much speed and time as he can, trying to extend that lead over Helmet. Firing down into Parabolica now, hard onto the brakes. Making that tight inside line as much as possible, gathering any ground he can. Firing off into the main straight now, setting himself up for that braking zone in that first chicane. Riding now with Dominic, our leader. Extending out on Ascari very well, keeping as much speed up as he can as he sees Schaefer bearing down on him, trying to get a run, trying to get a lap back in any way he can. Schaefer is only 3.2 behind Hill Horse, so any bit of tow that he can get from our leader now will help him in the long run. Your leader now coming down the main straight, getting ready to tick over for lap number 64. Coming down now, setting himself up for that braking zone into the first chicane. You see a lot of cars, one coming from the pits, one ahead of him. Could that possibly give him any trouble coming into this first chicane under that braking? We see now a congestion starting to form in that first chicane as your leader is starting to catch up with back markers again. You see Madley there holding his own in fourth spot. You might as well just let him pass, and Madley, don't fight him. Dominic firing down into that braking zone, heavy under the brakes. Making his way through that chicane, nice and easy. No mistakes. Looking eagerly to get around that Ferrari of Madley. Coming through Lesmo 1, extending out just barely, just enough. Firing down into Lesmo 2. Let's see how he fares that. How's he going to exit? A little bit deep there on the inside. Swapping over to Ian Simcox now. Nobody behind. Is there anybody ahead? Doesn't look like it. The nearest competitor ahead of him is 12 seconds ahead. Ian Simcox, you got yourself a nice bubble for you to try to put in some good lap times. As we see ahead, you got Zaker, who maybe you can get around. Get you another lap back. Who knows? Always go for it, but don't go too hard. coming around here in Curva Grande. Setting himself up behind Shaker for that braking zone in the second chicane. Hard under the brakes. Definitely trying to make up any time he can. Heavy into the braking zone. Exits just fine. Still got Shaker in his sights coming into Lesmo 1. How does he fare on the exit compared to Shaker? Takes about almost the same line. Shaker taking a little bit of an extended route. Got a little bit squirrely coming out of Lesmo 2, which has allowed Simcox to come sucking up to the rear of that other Lamborghini as we swap over to Dominic, and we see seems to be Schaefer gnawing hungrily at the bit behind him. Dominic taking that inside line as much as possible, following back with Shaker with Simcox right behind, trying to take that spot away from him. Question is he going to fight it? He looks like he's going defensive down into Parabolica. Heavy down into the brakes, taking that inside line. Simcox just sitting there waiting for a mistake to happen. Following back with Dominic. Now he's out, taking a wide line out of Lesmo 1 to get a little bit squirrely coming into Lesmo 2. Tightens it up that time with Schaefer trying to come around him. Dominic's just going to let him by. There's no point in fighting for non-position. Heavy into the braking zone of Ascari as we look on with Shaker, and it looks like Simcox might have made contact coming around, or he sent it in a little bit too deep because we saw what seemed to be a bit of a kerfuffle coming into that first chicane. Here we are with less than 10 minutes to go in this 2.4 hours of Monza here in the wet. Shaker's still trying to shake off Simcox, but it looks like he's having a little bit of a hard time. Simcox slowly drifting back. Here we are on with Hillhorst, and it looks like Madley going at it, coming into that braking zone of the first chicane. Schaefer coming in behind Hillhorst, hungry for that spot. Less than 1 second separating all of these cars. Taking a ride along with Hillhorst again, still calm as ever. Cold, calm, and collected this driver is. Following it back up now here, looking at more. No, Hillhorst. Excuse me. Hillhorst still trying to look for a way around Madley. Gets it a little bit wrong coming out of Lesmo 1, firing down into Lesmo 2, see if he gets it right this time. Still a little bit far of an exit on Lesmo 2. Trying to squeak out any bit of time he can, but Schaefer's here knocking on the door, asking for that position. Is Schaefer going to try to make a move on the inside, coming down into Ascari? Doesn't look like it, but he will soak up some of that time. Look at him coming in, chomping at the bit. Maybe he'll make a move in Parabolica or that first chicane. Everybody extending out as much as possible, keeping their speed up. Everybody's within the toe of the car ahead. Let's see what it makes of it. Firing down into Parabolica now. Nobody's wanting to make a move. Everybody's just wanting to keep speed, trying to keep the toe. Schaefer really trying to get the toe from Hillhorst here. Coming down onto the main straight. There he goes. Schaefer making a move to the inside. Let's see if he can make it stick coming into that braking zone. Schaefer thinks better of it as Hillhorst almost comes into the rear of Madley over braking. Schaefer trying to make a move from that mistake. Schaefer still hungry for that position in front of him from Hillhorst. Coming down into that braking zone, looking to the inside. Is he going to cut back? No, just heavy on the brakes. Hillhorst is very defensive through that second chicane. A little bit of a bobble from Schaefer, causing him to lose at least 2 or 3 tenths as we ride along with Josh Butler here. Coming out into Curva Grande now, see nobody behind. Is there anybody ahead? Not for a while as we come over to Millward in that number 46 AMS Racing McLaren. Looks like he's about to get passed up by Ian Simcox, who thinks better of it at the last second coming into that first chicane. Simcox very hungry for any position he can get at this point in time. Millward trying to be defensive, trying not to let him have that spot at all. Simcox thinks better, trying to look at the inside coming into this chicane. Thinks better of it the last moment again. What he's doing is putting himself in those mirrors of that car ahead to get inside his brain. Here we are setting him up for Lesmo 1, see what happens. Just still tucked up right behind him, hoping for a mistake. Coming into Lesmo 2 now. Exiting Lesmo 2, looks like he's got a bit of a run. See if he can't pull something through the kink and come into Ascari. With Shaker right behind. Ian looks to the inside and coming into Ascari. Is he going to think better of it? He pulls back in. Exiting Ascari, taking a little bit of a shallow line, still well within the toe of that McLaren ahead. Is he going to make a move this time as a parabolic, or is he just going to wait there? Back with Hill Horse with Schaefer on his tail. Coming through Lesmo 1. Schaefer taking a bit of a wide line, cutting back. Going into Lesmo 2, see if he makes up any of that time. We're within the last 5 minutes of this race, folks. Anything can happen as we're falling down into the kink now, going into braking zone for Ascari as we swap over to Jaker in that number 193 drive-through racing Lamborghini Huracan as he's trying to chase down Ian Simcox in that first chicane. Passing back to one position behind, and that would be Millward in that AMS number 46 McLaren, who put up a valiant fight against Ian Simcox as he's beginning to slowly fade back. Everybody's coming through that second chicane very well and tidy. Nobody's making any mistakes now. It's the last just over 3.5 minutes left of this race. As we say that, Justin Madley takes by on Partez, and Partez just sends it through into that first chicane, just no care. It could be either an issue with his brakes or net code or what have you, but he just sent it. As we're coming through with Madley now, coming into Curva Grande. Swapping over now with Josh Butler and that R Motorsport number 97 Aston Martin, trying to fight off Ian Simcox. Heavy under the braking into that first chicane. Takes it nice and easy. Nothing really doing here. Don't want to make any mistakes this late in the race. Coming into Curva Grande now. Still nice and tidy. Firing down into the braking zone of that second chicane, keeping it nice and tidy. Don't want to touch either of those sausage curbs on the inside. Coming down into Lesmo 1. He's in his own little world, trying to make a best lap he can. Seems to come out of Lesmo 1 just fine. How's he going to fire in exit of Lesmo 2? Coming in a little bit too much to the inner curb, but outside curb just fine. Coming down through the tunnel now as he's making his way to Ascari. Deep into the braking zone. Turns in nicely. Doesn't seem to have any issue coming through Ascari at all. Makes his way down that short straight going through to Parabolica as we move over to Jake Moore, who seems to have just found his way around Millward with zero issue coming down through here. Coming out of Lesmo 1. Changing over to Hillhorst, who is now trying to fight Schaefer back, but he's 2.4 behind. See if he can't make up that deficit in less than a minute, because we have just under, as a matter of fact, we have a minute left of this race to see who will come out on top. Right now we're still looking on with Hillhorse taking a little bit of a squirrely coming out of that second chicane as the rain starts to come down yet again. Coming into firing to Lesmo 1. Exit quite deep. Doesn't seem to have any issue from it though as he firing into Lesmo 2. Exits just as deep again as we swap over to George Crockett coming into Lesmo 2 himself. Bit of a tighter line there than normal. Helmet coming now through Curva Grande. No, I'm sorry. Outside of Parabolica coming down the main straight now. Less than 30 seconds in this 2.4 hour to go. Helmet firing his way down into that first chicane. Nice and easy. Last 10 seconds of this race, and it looks like our winner will be the number 1 Ferrari. Piloted both by Jack Alexander and Dominic Mizerzuiski. I cannot say that name. They have a question mark for their racing team, so I have named them the Who racing team. And their Porsche 911 GT3R 2019 number 1. Congratulations, guys. After a grueling 71 laps, you came out on top. And as we go through the rest of the field, we have Jaker in that 193 Lamborghini Huracan, Moore in that number 88 Audi, Madley in the 76 Ferrari, Schaefer in that number 12 BMW, Hillhorst in the number 2 Audi, Butler in that number 97 Aston Martin, Simcox in the number 25 Lamborghini Huracan, Helmet in that number 55 Porsche, RWB Flack in that number 276 Audi, Crockett in the number 304 Audi, Millward in the number 46 McLaren, Partez in the number 462 Audi, and Mad Al disqualified in 14th in the number 69 BMW. Hello, Nate.
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, quite well. How'd the race go?
It was a bit interesting. I had to sort out the stream.
Yeah. From my viewpoint, it was actually very good. Well entertaining race.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I've had my fill of rain for a little bit though.
Right. I can attest to that. Looks like we still have people finishing off. It looks like Hillhorst was the last one to finally finish out for the session. Are we still live?
So is this where we're going to end it, or?
I guess so. It seems like about as good place as any.
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week for the RST 2.4 series. I think there's some other events coming up, but I'm not as prepared as Rob. All right. Have a good night, folks.
Yep. Have a good one.